5 popular plant tips, what's true and what is wrong. Oh, I can't talk about this enough. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Carmiel Marceline and I'm so happy that you're here. If you're new to the channel, I love talking about plants and hopefully so do you. And you know what, throughout my plant journey, I've come across so many articles, different pieces of content telling me this tip, that tip, and honestly, sometimes I never know what's true and what is fake. Because we don't gatekeep on this channel, I'm going to share 5 popular plant tips and discuss whether or not you should follow them or you should avoid them. Let's get into it, shall we? Popular plant tip number 1, don't overwater. This one is a little tricky because it is true, but overwatering is a bit more complicated. So when you think of the term overwatering, you think, okay, I just can't give my plant too much water. Yes, that's the case, but it means that your plant is continuously getting watered while the soil is still wet. So the roots can't exactly absorb any more water. There's no air pockets between the roots and the soil, which means there's no room for oxygen. So how do you ensure that you're not overwatering your plant? Well, the first step is doing your research. Does the plant want moist soil? Does it want the soil to fully dry between waterings? The second thing is to invest in a moisture meter. Oh, I can't talk about this enough because it takes the guesswork out of it. All you do is stick it in the soil and it'll tell you if that soil is dry, wet, or moist. 3, you want to make sure that your soil is well draining. That means you're adding different amendments to it. 4, you want to make sure that your planter has drainage holes. If you have a nursery pot, don't worry, that's already covered. And lastly, 5, you want to make sure that you're giving it a nice long drink, especially if the water is bone dry. Get into all the nooks and the crannies. Popular plant tip number 2, use plants to purify your air. You may have seen all the signs touting air purifying plants at your local plant store, but be careful, okay? Because, you know, it kind of makes sense based on what we learned in middle school science class with photosynthesis, right? Like they take in carbon dioxide and expel oxygen. So essentially purifies the air, maybe girl math, girl science there, but that is wrong. Wrong. Let's get a little nerdy, shall we? And I'm going to read this off because I don't want to get it wrong. So there is actually a study done by the Journal of Exposed Science and Environmental Epidemiology in 2020 when they injected volatile organic compounds, VOCs, in a small sealed chamber. These are a common class of pollutants. Think of formaldehyde, ethanol, acetone, and what they actually found was, yes, the plants did remove the pollutants from the air, but they did so at a very, very slow rate. What they also found is that you actually need 10 potted plants per square foot if you want the plants to purify that air in the same rate as the experiment. So very unachievable for the everyday person. Honestly, why bother? Just get an air purifier. Make it easy on yourself. Popular plant tip number 3. You can never give your plant too much sunlight. Similar to humans, exposing your plants to excessive amounts of sunlight is not good. This is true! And unfortunately, we can't apply sunblock before or aloe after the fact to our plants. So let's get into the science. We know sunlight is important for photosynthesis. And when plants get too much sunlight, too much energy, it rapidly loses water in order to overcompensate and regulate the processes. So think of us as humans needing to sweat in order to also cool down. If the plant doesn't have enough water, the soil is also bone dry, then the plant will get scorched leaves, which means it'll have brown tips with yellow edges and just look not so happy. How do you ensure that you're giving your plant the right amount of sunlight? Well, one, you can do your research accordingly. Make sure that you know what type of sunlight it needs. Does it need bright sunlight? Does it need indirect sunlight? Two, you want to make sure that the placement of your plant in your home is adequate for what it needs. Usually, the closer you go to the window, the more bright and direct that sunlight is. And lastly, three, if you're going to increase your plant's exposure to sunlight, do so little by little. I oftentimes do this when I'm importing a plant order from abroad, right? Those plants have been in complete darkness for days. So after I clean everything up, I put it away from my window, maybe 10 feet away, and then each day I move it closer and closer to the window so it doesn't feel too abrupt and makes the plant get shocked. Tip number 4, don't buy some of that basic plain potting soil. I didn't know this whatsoever when I first started my plant journey, but not all soil is created equal. This is true. Yes, this is true. I mean, I'm sure when you walk into a big box store like Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, Walmart, you are very familiar with the Miracle-Gro's indoor potting mix. Well, this actually isn't very good for your plants because it doesn't have enough drainage, especially if you're prone to overwatering like me. What you want to do is actually buy succulent soil mix. Yes, you don't actually need to have succulents to use succulent soil. I don't know why in my head I thought that was the case, but it is not the case. What's great about these soil mixtures is that they have additional soil amendments that will increase the drainage. It's got lots of perlite, and it's perfect, again, if you are prone to overwatering like moi. Another thing you can do is create your own soil mixture. A lot of other plant YouTubers have a specific ratio of items they put in theirs. To be honest with you, I kind of just throw stuff into my soil box and hope for the best. And my plants seem to do just well. I start with a good foundation, so either the Espoma or Black and Gold succulent mix that already has a lot of great drainage, and I add things to it. I add more perlite, rice hulls, charcoal bits, orchid bark. So really it's up to you what your preference is. Popular plant tip number 5. Don't put succulents in terrariums. Surprisingly, this is true. One thing you'll always remember when you get into plants is the need to recreate that plant's natural environment in your home. And what's interesting is I remember a couple years ago going to different craft fairs, farmers markets, and I'd see vendors selling terrariums with succulents in them. And what's fascinating is that that's one of the worst places to put succulents because of the high humidity. Succulents are not tropical plants. They are found in the desert, which means they need long exposure to sunlight, little humidity. Too much humidity can cause fungal infections, root rot, overall death of your succulent. Just not good. It's equivalent to overwatering your tropical houseplant. So instead of putting your succulent in that terrarium or keeping it in there, make sure you put it next to your window. I'm pointing at my window, even though you can't really see it, so that it has ample sunlight and ample air circulation. There you have it. Those are 5 popular plant tips and whether or not you should follow them or you should avoid them. Did any of these surprise you? Did you know any of them? Let me know down below in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a thumbs up. It would help me and my channel so very much. If you want to see more videos like this, everything plant related, subscribe. and ring that bell so you're notified every single time I post, which is every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. And with that, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks so much for spending it with me, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye!